My name's Dexter, I'm 27, and I guess you could say my life was fairly ordinary, until it wasn't. My wife, Isabella, is 26, just a year younger than me. My dad, Archie, is 52, and my mom, Ida, recently hit the big 50. Honestly, I never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this. I mean, whoever thinks something this twisted could actually happen to them? But here I am. And judging by what I've seen from others who've lived through something similar, a little background seems to help paint the full picture. So, let me walk you through it. I'll try to keep things clear and give you all the context without rambling. Isabella and I first met back in college, during her freshman year. We ended up in the same dorm building, and it wasn't long before our paths crossed in a more official way. It's kind of funny looking back. We eventually realized we'd grown up just 2 towns apart. That coincidence made things pretty convenient. Anytime we headed home for a break, I'd offer her a ride. Sure, it added about 20 extra minutes to my trip, but I didn't really mind back then. After a few road trips and spending more time around each other on campus, we naturally started dating. My family's always been close, and from the outside, hers seemed similar enough. So, we didn't wait long before telling our folks about the relationship. I'd briefly met her parents a couple of times while dropping her off, but it was always surface level, just polite greetings and small talk. Both sides were supportive, at least on the surface, and the relationship seemed to get stronger with time. Since I was a year ahead of her, I graduated first and moved back home. Luckily, I landed a solid job pretty quickly, good pay, good benefits, the whole deal. Even with work, I made an effort to visit her at school whenever I could. And when she was back in town, we'd spend most of our time together. Once she graduated, she moved in with me. It made sense. Our jobs were both located near where we grew up, so the transition felt natural. She also secured a well-paying job, and things were comfortable. We lived together for about 3 years, and then I proposed. After that, our lives started revolving around wedding plans. That's when things slowly began to shift, and not in a good way. Thinking back now, there were so many red flags that I chose to overlook. I kept telling myself my dad was just trying to make her feel like part of the family. He'd call her often, more than I thought necessary, but every time I brought it up or overheard a call, they'd chalk it up to planning family events or coordinating something harmless. There was this one time that should have been a huge clue. Isabella was in the shower when her phone started ringing. Without giving it a second thought, I picked it up. It was my dad. The second he heard my voice, he seemed off, like I'd just interrupted something. His tone shifted, irritated, maybe even defensive. I asked him what was going on, and he mumbled something about needing to talk to Isabella about my mom's birthday plans. We ended the call, and I shrugged it off. Looking back now, I can't believe how naive I was. The day everything unraveled started out completely normal. It was a Thursday. Isabella had taken the day off work and surprised me by making breakfast. She acted sweet, kissed me goodbye, and told me to have a great day like she always did. On my way to the office, I realized I'd forgotten an important folder I needed for a big meeting later that day. No big deal. I figured I'd just swing back home during lunch to grab it. Throughout the morning, Isabella texted me like usual, asking about dinner plans, offering to take care of my laundry. Just the typical, thoughtful wife routine she put on when it suited her, but I hadn't told Isabella I'd be swinging by the house during lunch. There didn't seem to be a reason to mention it. At least, not until I found out why I should have. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a car that looked exactly like my dad's. Same make, same color. I brushed it off at first, figured it was just a coincidence, and parked like nothing was out of the ordinary. I walked up, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside, and instantly felt like I'd walked straight into some low-budget, cliché movie, the kind where the husband comes home early and catches his wife mid-betrayal. Except this wasn't a movie. It was real. And it was mine. There was a trail of clothes, some mine, most definitely not, scattered from the living room all the way down the hall. Both hers and his, leading right to our bedroom. I could hear soft moans coming from behind the door, echoing through what used to be our safe space. I froze. My body wouldn't move, and my mind scrambled to make sense of what I was hearing. If someone had been watching me, I probably looked like a man in shock, completely paralyzed. After a few seconds, or maybe minutes, I finally snapped out of it. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I started picking up their clothes, one by one, and chucked them into the hallway. I wanted them to see it, to know I knew. With my phone still rolling, I walked toward the bedroom. The door wasn't even shut. They hadn't even bothered. I stood there silently for a long moment before I flicked on the lights. The sudden brightness sent them both into a panic. Isabella screamed. My father jumped like he'd been electrocuted. And just like that, my worst nightmare took on a face, two faces. Neither of them said a word at first. They just stared, wide-eyed and frozen. But when my dad realized I had my phone out and was recording, he went into full damage control. He grabbed the nearest towel and tried to cover himself while stumbling over words, begging me to stop filming. He wrapped the towel around his waist and started moving toward me like he thought he could fix this. I held my ground and told him flatly, if you don't want to get hurt, take one more step. Maybe he didn't believe me. Maybe he thought I was bluffing. Or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, he kept walking. So, I let my fist do the talking. I hit him square in the jaw, hard, and he dropped like dead weight. His head cracked against the doorframe on the way down. Isabella let out this high-pitched shriek like she was the one betrayed, like she had a right to be horrified. I didn't even look at her at first. I just pointed the camera straight at her face and said, "Oh, now you're worried about him? Nothing to say to me? No fake tears? No excuses?" My dad eventually started coming to, groaning and holding his head. I didn't give him a chance to speak. I told them both, cold and clear, I came back to grab something for work. I'm leaving now. If either of you scumbags is still here when I get back, this video goes out to everyone you know. Then I stopped the recording. I turned to my dad, who was still lying there, trying to pull himself together. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You're dead to me. You are not my father anymore." And to make things crystal clear, I added, "You might want to hurry home, because I'm going to be having a very real conversation with Mom." I walked out, got into my car, and just sat there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared blankly through the windshield until my phone rang. One of my managers was calling, checking on where I was. I told her I'd be back soon. When I got to the office and handed her the paperwork, she looked at me like I'd just crawled out of a wreck. First thing she said was, "What happened? Are you all right?" I tried to play it off. I really did. I told her I was fine, just needed a minute. But she wasn't buying it. She stepped closer, her eyes locking on something just below my collar. "Dex, you're bleeding." I looked down. There it was, blood on my shirt. I answered without flinching, "It's not mine. It's my father's." Her eyes widened, filled with a mix of confusion and concern. I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. I figured, why lie? She watched the whole thing, her jaw practically on the floor. She'd met Isabella a couple of times at company events, always thought she seemed charming. Guess that mask worked on more people than just me. When the video ended, she just sat in stunned silence. Eventually, she found her voice again and asked if there was anything she could do, offered to let me take a few days off if I needed. I shook my head and told her the truth. I can't go home right now. I just need a bit to collect myself, and then I'll be ready for the meeting. I've got a clean shirt in my office. Somehow, I got through the meeting. I even managed to smile, laugh at a joke or two, play the part. No one would have guessed what had happened just hours earlier. Afterward, my boss came by my office again. She leaned against the doorway and quietly asked how I was doing. All I could say was, I honestly don't even know. Once I left work, I went back to the apartment. And for the first time in years, I was completely, utterly alone. The silence hit hard, but not in a sad way. It was sobering. I knew in that moment I couldn't stay. I couldn't sleep in that bed again. Couldn't breathe the same air that had held them in it. I also knew I needed to get tested for STDs. God only knows what she's been doing and with who. And to top it all off, my hand was swollen and aching. I was pretty sure I'd fractured something when I clocked my dad. The next morning, I tried to get in touch with my mom. I called her phone over and over, but nothing went through. No ringing. Just straight to voicemail. I wasn't going to do this over a call anyway. I wanted to sit her down and tell her the truth, to look her in the eyes and explain what her husband had done. After trying to reach my mom about a dozen times, I gave up on the calls. I had to see her face to face. She needed to know the truth, even though I already knew that saying it out loud would just rip the wound open again. The whole drive there, I rehearsed every word in my head, but the more I thought about it, the more my anxiety started to spike. I had to pull over twice, just to throw up. How the hell do you tell your mother that her husband has been sleeping with your fiancé? I don't care who you are. Those words don't come easy. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I sat there in the car for a minute, trying to collect myself before I could even step out. And then, The door flew open. My mom came charging out, looking like a storm cloud. She was furious. "How dare you show up here after hitting your father?" she screamed. "He was just trying to break up a fight between you and Isabella." She didn't hold back at all, accused me of being some kind of monster, an abuser. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, she told me that Isabella wasn't ready to forgive me yet. She had the nerve to say that if Isabella had any sense, she never would. Apparently, my dad had dragged her back to the house and spun some ridiculous story about how Isabella and I had fought, and he was just trying to play peacemaker, while I, of course, lashed out and hit him. I couldn't handle it anymore. I snapped. "Seriously, Mom? You actually believe that? Your husband is sleeping with my fiancée. That's why I hit him. And if you don't believe me, I'll send you the proof. But don't you dare expect me to ever speak to you again after what you've just said. When you finally come to the realization that you're just as bad as he is, don't bother coming to me for an apology." Her face went ashen. The shock hit her like a freight train. I pulled out my phone, sent her the video, and just watched her stand there, completely stunned. She made it as far as the moment I flipped on the light. Then she froze. She slowly set her phone down, her gaze lifting to meet mine. But by then, I was already heading back to my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I stole one last glance at her. She was crying, but even though a part of me wanted to turn around and comfort her, I knew it was too late. She crossed a line I couldn't come back from. When I got home, I started packing up everything, every single thing that reminded me of Isabella or my family. I packed up all her stuff and left it by the front door. Legally, she had been living here, so I couldn't just throw her out. But her name wasn't on the lease, and I wasn't about to let her walk back into my life so easily. She's the type to avoid confrontation, but if she shows up for anything other than collecting her belongings, I'll make sure she gets a whole lot of it. I boxed up anything related to my parents and put it all into storage. We used to be close, but I had no problem cutting toxic people out of my life, and now it was their turn. I sent a message to Isabella's parents, letting them know the engagement was off and explaining that she'd been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they'd done for me. We hadn't been close for long, but they'd always been kind, and honestly, that kindness only made the betrayal sting even more. I asked them to come pick up her things, saying I didn't want to see her again. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'm hoping they'll pick up her stuff soon. That way, she'll have no reason to come back. And as much as I wish I could say I'm okay, that'd be a lie. My emotions have been all over the place. Some days I feel numb, like I'm floating through the motions. Other days, I'm so angry I feel like I could explode. I haven't had a moment of peace since all this came crashing down. I've lost nearly everyone. My family? A complete disaster. And while a few close friends still stick by me, that's it. I knew I had to get my life together somehow. So, I started with the basics, getting tested, finding a therapist, moving out, and, of course, buying a new bed. First things first, I called my doctor's office, asked for a test, and requested a referral for therapy. I had my first therapy session 2 weeks ago, and we've been meeting every week since. I got tested last week, but it'll be another week before I get the results. Here's hoping they come back clean. I also contacted a real estate agent I know, and he sent me a bunch of listings. I found a refurbished cabin on the outskirts of the city and moved in 2 days ago. After the move, I called Isabella's parents again. I told them I'd officially left the apartment and mentioned that Isabella still hadn't picked up her stuff. I warned them that the landlord would soon be showing the place, and if they didn't act fast, everything would be thrown out. I guess that lit a fire under them because the next day, my old landlord texted me to thank me for getting the place cleared out. Now, no one, not Isabella, not my parents, knows where I'm living. Well, except for the friend who helped me find the place. The downside? I traded a quick 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone's been blowing up with calls and texts from Isabella, my parents, and even some old friends. But honestly, I'm not in the mood to talk to anyone. The only person I want to hear from right now is my therapist. At work, I've become a ghost. I show up, do my job, and leave. When I have to interact, I slap on a fake smile and pretend everything's fine. My boss checks in on me frequently, but I don't open up. I just thank her for her concern and tell her I'll be fine. The truth? I don't know if I'll ever truly be fine again. They say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's true. It might work when you're dealing with one problem, one issue at a time, but when you lose the 3 closest people in your life all at once, it feels like a part of you just died. There's no coming back from that. Therapy's been helpful, I guess. I've never done therapy before, so I don't really have any idea what good therapy looks like. But we get along well enough, and she genuinely wants to help me. The first session was mostly just introductions and talking about how I ended up in this mess. By the second session, we were digging deeper. She asked about my relationship with my parents, and I told her it had always been solid. At least, it was until everything fell apart. Growing up, we had a great home life. We communicated well. But now, all that is just meaningless. She asked me why I'd cut my mom off, and I told her straight up. My mom had said things to me that I wouldn't say to someone I hated. Once you cross that line, there's no going back. At the end of my last session, I shared the link to my YouTube channel with her. I thought it might help her understand more of what I've been going through. So, hey doc, if you're listening, right now, I'm still feeling miserable. I thought I'd be in a better place by now. Not happy, but at least okay. But I'm not. I know some of it's on me. I haven't reached out to my friends. The thought of responding to their messages or calls is just exhausting. I know they'll want to come over or hang out or do something, but I'm just not ready for that. Not yet. So, for now, I'm keeping busy, working, going to therapy, sitting on the back deck with a bottle of cheap whiskey and trying to enjoy the view. I haven't gone hunting since high school, but with this new place, I could probably do it right from my porch. I might give it a shot. On a brighter note, I'm relieved to say that my STD test came back clean. That's one thing I don't have to worry about. And I'm finally starting to feel settled into my new place. When I said I bought a refurbished cabin, I might have exaggerated just a little. It was refurbished about 25 to 30 years ago, so it's a bit dated. But with all this free time I've got, I've taken on some renovations myself. The only thing left to do is paint the guest room, which I've turned into a home office. I've stayed away from the electrical and plumbing work, though. No interest in getting electrocuted or dealing with sewage pipes. Honestly, working on this place has been a great way to relieve some stress, clear my head, and keep me occupied. I'm still seeing my therapist once a week, and honestly, it's probably the only thing that's kept me from losing it. Being able to vent, to let out my frustrations and get real advice has been invaluable. I'm still working at the same company, but I've started opening up a bit more to a few of my closer coworkers and even my boss, thanks to my therapist's advice. With her encouragement and a little push from you all, I've even started reaching out to my friends again, slowly getting back into the swing of things. But now, let me give you an update on my so-called family and my ex. After a lot of thought, I finally decided I was ready to talk to my mom. About a month ago, I unblocked her number and called her. She picked up almost immediately, and I could hear the panic in her voice. I reassured her it was me and suggested we meet. She agreed right away. The next day, we met at a diner near her house. She was already there when I arrived, and the second she saw me, she started quietly sobbing. When I sat down, she kept apologizing. She said she could only believe what she'd been told because, in her words, she never imagined in a million years that my dad and Isabella would be involved. I told her I appreciated the apology, but that what she said to me before was disgusting. Things no mother should ever say to her son. The things she said revealed what she really thought of me, and I couldn't just forget that. She broke down harder, swearing it wasn't true, that she was just furious when she heard I hit my dad. She explained that when I showed up at the house, she let her anger take over. But I didn't want to rehash it all again. So, I let it go, changing the subject and asking what she was doing about my father. She told me that the day after I sent her the video, she'd separated from him and already contacted a lawyer. As for Isabella, my mom said that after I left her house, she couldn't stand to be around either of them anymore, so she threw them both out. We talked for about an hour, but before I left, I told her, flat out, that because of what she said to me, I didn't have my mother when I needed her the most. And because of that, I didn't know if I could ever have her in my life again. I told her I was willing to work on things, but only at my pace. As I stood to leave, she stopped me. She said she had something important to tell me. Reluctantly, I sat back down. And that's when she dropped the bombshell. Isabella was pregnant. That news hit me like a freight train. Apparently, Isabella had gone to my mom's house and confessed that she wasn't sure whether the baby was mine or my father's. She had asked my mom if I'd been in touch, because she wanted to let me know. My mom hadn't heard from me, so she just sent Isabella away. Hearing that news, I couldn't even process it. Isabella, pregnant, and there was a chance that baby could be mine. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mind couldn't wrap around it. I stood up and left the diner without saying another word. My mom called after me, but I couldn't face her, Not in that moment. I was too shaken, too overwhelmed. I got in my car and just started driving, not knowing where I was headed, not caring. Eventually, I ended up back at the cabin, my temporary safe haven. The next few days passed in a haze of confusion and anxiety. I couldn't bring myself to answer my phone or read the flood of messages that piled up. I wasn't ready to deal with the emotions, the pain, or the uncertainty. My therapist kept pushing me to confront it, but the best I could do was write it all down in my journal, hoping that somehow, putting it on paper might make it make sense. I kept my distance from my closest friends. I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone about the pregnancy. The shame hung around me like a heavy fog, sucking the life out of me. I just went through the motions, waking up, going to work, doing the bare minimum, and then retreating back into my solitude. My boss tried to check in a few times, but I brushed her off, repeating my usual weak line, "I'm fine," before disappearing back into my shell. About a week later, my mom left me a voicemail. Her voice was laced with desperation as she begged me to speak to Isabella and get to the bottom of the pregnancy. Her plea felt like a punch in the gut, but at the same time, I couldn't bring myself to ignore it. My therapist suggested I reach out to Isabella's parents. She thought they might help facilitate a calm, productive conversation. Hesitant and unsure, I sent them a message, explaining my concerns and asking for their help in setting up a meeting with Isabella. They responded almost immediately, offering their support. Finally, I met with Isabella. She looked completely wrecked. Her eyes were swollen, bloodshot from crying, and she could barely meet my gaze. When she spoke, her voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. "I'm so sorry, Dexter," she whispered. "I know I've done the worst thing imaginable," she said, her words cutting deep. "I don't even know whose baby this is." Her confession hit me harder than anything she'd ever said. But somehow, I managed to stay calm. I didn't want this to turn into a fight. "Isabella," I said quietly, "I don't want to fight, I just need the truth," I told her. She nodded, and her parents quickly arranged for a paternity test amniocentesis to be done as soon as possible. The next few days were a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. The idea that the child could be mine terrified me, but the alternative, that the baby could be my father's, was even worse. I couldn't stop imagining the kind of life that poor child would have with my father as a father. It was a nightmare, one I couldn't shake. When the results finally came in, they confirmed my worst fear. The baby wasn't mine. It was my father's. Isabella collapsed in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably as the full weight of her betrayal hit her. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out, cutting her off completely. I refused to stay in touch. That was the end. Rebuilding my life from the wreckage of everything that had happened seemed impossible some days, but my therapist helped me take it one step at a time. My mother was devastated, of course, but she moved forward with the divorce. She wanted nothing to do with either Isabella or the child, and she cut my father out of her life completely. He tried everything to change her mind, but she stood firm. As for Isabella, she found herself alone, estranged from both families and left to raise the child on her own. As for me, I focused on finding some sense of peace, no matter how hard it seemed. I threw myself into rebuilding my life from scratch. The cabin I had bought became more than just a place to stay. It became my refuge, my sanctuary. Slowly, I began making it my own. I poured my energy into making it a home again. Little by little, I started reaching out to friends, trying to rebuild those connections. I started opening up more in my therapy sessions, talking about everything, the fear, the grief, and the unbearable weight of the betrayal that still hung over me like a cloud. I knew I couldn't change what had happened, but I also knew I couldn't let it control me. No matter how many times I replayed it all in my mind, the past couldn't be undone. But I had a choice in how I moved forward. The scars would never completely heal, but I was determined to find peace, no matter how long it took. I was learning to accept that while the past was set in stone, the future was still mine to shape. Right now, my head is full of so many thoughts, so many emotions, and I don't even know how to feel or what to do next. I just wanted to share everything I've been through and maybe get some advice on how to keep moving forward. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.